Blog Talk Radio.
Hoor jy die magtige trene? Oor die veld kom dit wyd gesweef. Die lied van 'n volk se ontwaking, wat harte laat sidder en beef.
Ek smoeg vir die vrese waarmee ons moet lewe, vir guns en vir moord en vir rape. Ek smoeg vir die bad news, vir Zuma en sy views, van ons op TV moet kyk. Ek wil nie meer hoor hoe ons tieners begrawe, oor niemand wil steur aan die wet. Ek wil nie meer lees van affirmative action op 'n klei om te hou wat ek het. Gee vir my 'n nuwe geit, 'n koers toe plesie en 'n tellery, wat liedjies sing en skryf en stry, oor die mooi van ons land en ons reg om hier te kan bly. Ek siek vir Malema, sy leuns en sy sê maar, ons hou maar ons mond en betaal. Ons kruip weg in kampe, word blind vir die rampe, en bid dat die Heer ons omhaal. Daar's Winnie Mandela, wat mense verbrand het, maar nou wil sy huil in haar hand. Die staatskas is leeg en die ANC jeug saai verwoesting en pyn deur ons land. Gee vir my 'n nuwe geit, 'n koers toe plesie en 'n tellery, wat liedjies sing en skryf en stry, oor die mooi van ons land en ons reg om hier te kan bly. Het betaal vir die grond, waar sy kinders se kinders kan bly. Maar sy huis en sy lande is nou in die hande van die vyand teen wie hy moes stry. Ons kinders verstaan nie, waar kom al vandaan nie, hul erfenis is uitgewis. Geen volkslied of vlag nie, en geen erewag nie, vir die helde wat daar nie meer is. Gee vir my 'n nuwe geit, 'n koers toe plesie en 'n tellery, wat liedjies sing en skryf en stry, oor die mooi van ons land en ons reg om hier te kan bly. Gee vir my 'n nuwe geit, 'n koers toe plesie en 'n tellery, wat liedjies sing en skryf en stry, oor die mooi van ons land en ons reg om hier te kan bly. En ons reg om hier te kan bly.
Welcome to Radio Free South Africa, broadcasting on the Rage Against the Regime podcast. Once more, I would like to thank Becky Williams and Bobby Ritter for giving us this opportunity and this platform to spread the word about what is really happening in South Africa. This is your host, Karen Smith. For our new listeners, our intro music is an Afrikaans song by well-known singer and activist Sunette Bridges. The song translated into English means enough. Enough of the rape, the torture, the murder, the land grabs, the laws against the white South Africans, simply because they are white. And all they are fighting for is a place to call their own. Today, our guest is Francois Cloete. He's a young man, a member of Front National, the South African liaison, and the treasurer of that political party. For Front National, self-determination and the establishment of a Volksstaat are the only ways to ensure that there's no economic discrimination against them, and that, more importantly, that Afrikaner culture is preserved. Now, there have been many things that have happened this year, and here's a small list of them. President Zuma spoke out at a speech and said that the problems in South Africa began the day that Jan van Riebeeck set foot on that continent. He also called on a witch doctor to get rid of the spirit of Jan van Riebeeck. Universities have been attacked, statues have been defaced and removed. Afrikaans has become an even bigger problem in universities and schools. The land invasions and the taking of land are getting worse and worse by the day because the leader of the economic freedom fighters has said that land must not belong to the whites. Mr. President Mugabe, visiting South Africa, said that he doesn't want to see a white face and refuses to speak to white journalists. The economic freedom fighters have attacked whites with shambox. And this is just a small list of the things that are happening in South Africa in a very, very short time. To join us today, Francois is here to tell us his take and what Front National and the youth of South Africa intend to do about this travesty. Welcome, Francois.
Thanks, Karen, for the opportunity, and welcome to all the listeners from elsewhere here in South Africa. Actually, a very warm South Africa today.
It's very warm here too, Francois. It's 108 degrees in the shade here in Texas at the moment, so I know about the heat.
In Africa, the heat is it's a day-to-day basis, and we had a bit of a cold winter, but that's luckily over for us now.
Yeah,
just in spring here.
It is so funny for people here that we are heading into winter now with a white Christmas, and South Africa in its history has never seen snow at Christmas. They just can't picture a Christmas with the sun shining and people having a barbecue around the swimming pool. It's so strange to them, as it is strange to you to imagine being huddled inside over a heater at Christmas.
Yeah, there's actually songs in the USA that's going about the white Christmas. Here in South Africa, we got an Afrikaans song that have a summer Christmas. So that's the only song that we can relate to, actually.
Absolutely. Francois, please could you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself, about how you came to be involved with Front National, and what they stand for?
I became involved in politics when I was 19 years old at the university level, but the reason why I joined the politics in South Africa is to be an activist regarding our situation in South Africa, because as a young man like myself, I went to school in 1996 into the school system. That's 2 years after democracy started here in South Africa. And the problem is that we are facing here is that what we call this black economic empowerment and affirmative action, that law is put into place by the ANC regime on the basis that blacks getting first jobs. But the thing is that the black population makes up 80% of the population. So I don't see the need for a law to help yourself when you are already in majority. So white people and other minority groups in South Africa, but especially the white people, is not getting the jobs and in the quota system that is in the university system. So you can't actually go and study everything that you want to. And actually myself wanted to study, well, my intention was to go and study to become a doctor in the medical field. But I couldn't do it because only 2 out of the 10 students that apply will be white students in that field at university. So the probable chance that you will get that is absolute zero, because you have to get a 90% average. I don't know what is the GPA on that. So, but the thing is that white young people in South Africa are suffering because of that. And why I joined another political party back then, but then I became involved with Front National because of his more direct stance towards our case, and Front National is a white party that's standing for the white ethnic group here in South Africa to fight for their rights and self-determination, and to put the end to this discrimination towards our group in South Africa. And Front National is taking that fight to the ANC and to the other political parties that want us out of this lovely country of ours.
So when was Front National established, Francois?
Front National was established in December 2013 when three political organizations acclimated into one, the Federal Freedom Party, the Boer Crisis Actie, and other Afrikaans organizations came together and said that we have to form a bigger, broader alliance to fight the case because we can't be in different groups. In December 2013, Front National was established, and we are almost 2 years later and making bigger strides every day that we taking our case forward everywhere in the world, like the UN and even in the media. But we're getting our case back there, and we're winning the fight at the moment.
I very much admire Front National for that, because in South Africa, there's a huge division between the Afrikaans-speaking Boers. There's a fight going on at the moment. Are you an Afrikaner or a Boer? And even the Afrikaners are divided into those categories. But because of the British concentration camps during the Boer Wars, that division between the English and the Afrikaans has never gone away in South Africa. And I do not see another political party that is willing to stand up for both people. The political parties are either Afrikaans or English. They do not want to join hands. So for that reason, I very, very much admire Front National, because they have taken the stance that white South Africans are South Africans. It doesn't matter whether you're an Afrikaner, a Boer, or a Donnerse Engelsman, which is an English person. They don't draw a distinction between any of those groups. And I feel, and the biggest message that I put out on all my shows is that there are too few whites in South Africa to be able to be splintered into little groups that represent an even smaller minority. So Front National are doing a great thing by speaking up for the white minority in South Africa. I don't know of anybody else who's doing that.
No, we're the only party that stands for white South Africans. We're the only one that distinguish on that side, because some of the so-called Afrikaner parties these days acclimated with other minority groups from other races, of mixed races, to broaden their support, but they're losing the whole plot there, because you can't have your attention divided, and that's going into a liberal side. So, and we said we're standing by our stance, and we are fighting for white South Africans. If you are a Boer or an Afrikaner or an Englishman or a Portuguese, we all from Europe. So if you're from European descent and white descent, you're a part of our plans to get the fight going.
Absolutely, Francois, because it is useless to have all these splinter groups. I spoke to somebody from Vryheidsfront, Freedom Front, the other day, and that's another story, because they are, as you've just said, they are speaking for all the minorities in South Africa. So that means Indians, coloreds, which are mixed race Malays, not coloreds as understood in America. They are not black people, they are mixed people. They're standing for all of those. And he himself said, if you do not focus, then you're not going to have a direction to go in. So if you are standing for all of these groups, then your focus is scattered, and you're not a united front, as it were. So Front National, in that way, is the most focused, directioned people or group of people that I know of in South Africa.
And the most popular one. If there is other groups that do not get onto the radar, and because we are getting things right, because we're doing it the legal way, and we're doing it in a direct way, and telling directly to the government what we are thinking. So not to make physical conflict, but to tell them we are not going to stand back on that. So, but the thing is that Front National is the only one that can, at the moment, speak for white South Africans, because we are the only one in our policies that states that we are fighting for white South Africans' rights and the self-determination right, because we see it as the only solution. And I know self-determination is not a term that is likely to be used in the United States and other parts in the world, but self-determination is, if I can explain it to you in a few sentences, is that we are getting control of our own affairs, own political situation, and that we are getting a new country that, like South Sudan did a few years ago and Bangladesh in the 70s. So getting new countries, and when the USSR divided into a lot of own countries for specific ethnic groups, and that's on the same basis that we want to get our own country, because we only believe that if we are in the majority, we can only survive here in the dark continent of Africa.
So I would just like to explain to our listeners that in South Africa, in 1994, when the ANC took over, they are a communist party. They were trained by the Cubans and the Russians during the civil war in South Africa, as it were. They call themselves freedom fighters, but essentially they were terrorists, and they are very, very much communist people. They're aligned with the South African Communist Party, and they don't mind saying that up front. They also are members of BRICS, which is Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. So they are very much communist aligned. And when they took over the country, they immediately instituted affirmative action. Now, affirmative action, as it is understood by the rest of the world, is supposedly a very good thing. And if it had remained at that, with a sunset clause, an end to it, an end date for it, it would have been a fairly good thing. But it has grown into more than 119 laws that protect the black majority of there are approximately 70 million people in South Africa. And of that 70 million, depending which figure you take, 3.5 or 4.5 million are white. So the huge black majority has instituted more than 119 laws to keep the white people out of the workplace. And that is called broad-based black economic empowerment. Now, can you speak to that and the results of that, Francois?
Yes, on that note, is that if you think to a ways and jobs is advertised, and certain companies need to apply to those laws. So what happens is there's a code system that you're getting points for, to getting it to a certain level of what the broad-based economic empowerment, we have an acronym BBEE or BEE, so as we call it in the shorter term, is that you get points for certain categories in the BE code. So what is it? To the more black employees there is and more black management there is, you get more points. So actually companies to get stay all those, they going in that direction. So if the jobs is advertised, they say directly to you, this will be a BEE job. So a white person can apply, but he will definitely not get the job. So that's in a business sense. Business people around the world coming to South Africa have to apply to those laws. Even if you're an American company or a European company getting a branch here, you have to apply to those laws. So these people have to employ black people, even if they are not even qualified. Most of the jobs that advertise do not get the needed qualification candidates. So in that case, qualified people getting jobs, and a certain rate of like the white people is not getting jobs because of those codes. And for myself, I applied for, and there's another scenario regarding that. And then sometimes they advertise a job as a non-BEE job, and then you go there, then the company get their act together, and they says, oh no, this job have to be changed into a BEE, then now you're losing your job. So, and they're also giving people packages go just to get him off the payroll, employing back to get e-codes on. So everything is regarding in the business place is going BE. If you want to get the tender, you have to apply to BE codes. So the problem is that many white people is excluded from the job market. So, and myself, in my first job interview after graduating from university, I went for an interview and it was a non-BE job, and actually I was the best candidate and all, and then the white manager actually come after a few days after the final interview and said, no, you have to change the job category to a BE job. And so I lost the job to a black candidate that wasn't qualified, have no university degree. So on that note, that is broad-based economic empowerment. So certain jobs is classified only for black people and people of color. So the more black you is, the more points you receive on the system. That's the story. If you're black enough, you get a job in South Africa.
Yes, and I also need to jump in there and tell you that not just your company, but everybody who is a supplier to your company also has to be BBEE compliant. So if you are a printer, your ink supplier, your paper supplier, your delivery person, all of them have to also prove that they are compliant with those laws, or you yourself will not get the job. Now, as if you were a business person, what would you do? Your bottom line is what's important to you. You need to make a profit, so you abide by those laws. But the impact on the white citizens of South Africa has been horrific. Because Francois was saying, I don't think he stressed it, but even universities go by that system. They have to be 80 or 90% other color.
Yes, if I can explain to that, they're using a name for that. They're using a system. So, actually, for me, when I studied the B, there was actually not a quota system on that degree, but degree engineering and all the fields in the medical, a quota system is applied that a number of students of certain race groups have to get in, like for every 10 students, 8 of them have to be of color, where of that 8 of color have to be 7 of African, and that is the black race. So, and then the other 2 candidates, one can be white, and then the second one, the last position is based on merit. So, and usually it's a white person. So, actually, only the 2 best candidates out of 10 students that apply get in, and not a people that have to get in on merit is not getting to study at certain degrees. And on that system, also is applied into the sports arena. So, and actually now with the South African rugby team, they actually put in quota on that they have to be for a Rugby World Cup that is starting the next week in England. So it have to supply 9 players of color to be included into the Springbok squad. And the Springbok squad, Springbok is the nickname for our South African rugby team, just for the listeners to explain on that one. It have to be 9 of the 31 players have to be of color. That is it. That's the minimum. So the coach have to name 9 players of color to be included. And all of our sport coaches in South Africa, cricket, rugby, soccer, all of them have a quota system that a certain number of black players have to be included, regardless of they are the best or not. And some of them, I see it as even for a black man to be chosen in a team and he knew that he's not good enough, I wouldn't be proud of that. But I don't think they care at the moment. So they're just happy to get the big bucks and to be in the team. So, and now we are losing a lot of sports people to other countries to go and play for them, just to represent them on the highest level of sport. And now we're losing a lot of talented players just because of a stupid quota system that was supplied by a regime that do not care about white people in South Africa.
So there's 3 things I'd like to mention there. One is that there was a news headlines that said that the government would prefer to keep positions vacant rather than employ white people in order to abide by the BB rules. So there are a lot of high-level positions in government, in municipalities, which are town councils in America, in fact, throughout the entire spectrum of business in South Africa, that are empty and will not be filled because there are not black people educated or with the right degrees to fill them. The other thing is that in sport, I feel it's an insult to the rest of the world to send players based on their color, because our sportsmen, our cricket team and our rugby team in particular, are the best in the world, and they have proven that over and over again. So now they are being diluted and because of these quota systems, and I feel it's an insult to the other players who are the best in the world, chosen for their country's teams, and they are playing against substandard people simply because of a quota system. And the third thing that I would like you to speak about is the impact on white charities of these rules.
Yes, because now white charities is also being supplied on the same type of BEE codes that we have now. If your charity is not black enough, you can't get tax exemption after tax deductions on it. So white charities can't get sponsors from companies because are too white, because there's a certain percentage that have to be the beneficiary have to be black. So if the beneficiary is not black enough, then they wouldn't get the tax deduction on that. So companies do donate to charities for a tax deduction and just to get to pay less taxes. So they will give it to black charities, like the Nelson Mandela Fund is one of them, that is one of the biggest charities in South Africa and probably in the Southern Hemisphere that I can remember of. So those type of charities is getting all the money, and the needy charities for white people isn't getting any money because companies cannot supply to them because of that, because they only supply to charities where they can get the tax deduction. And so I can't understand why white companies want to sponsor charities that is 90% black beneficiaries. So and now these white beneficiaries, like my own charity that I have, cannot get money from corporate companies just because of that. So we have to get from the public funding, and that's not enough to help our people.
Absolutely not. Because, Francois, I think we also need to speak about this. But if more than 20% of your white population is out of the job market, and I believe that it's close on 1 million now, in the so-called squatter camps, which is not a good word for it, because it doesn't describe what they really are. A squatter camp makes it sound as if those people are there willingly, took a piece of land that doesn't belong to them and squat on it, which is not what they're doing. But for want of a better word, we have 1 million or close on 1 million white dispossessed people living in these camps out of a population of, let's say, 4 million. So we have a quarter of the white population living in these camps, and 3/4 of them have to then provide for these people, which is impossible. Because think about it yourself. How much savings does the normal man have? In today's world, not very much. So if you were to lose your job, how long would it be before you lost your home, your car, your middle-class schooling, and then what happens to you?
Yeah, so on that, after someone loses a job and he cannot get a new job within a time frame of 6 months, he will lose his house in approximately 2 months after that. So it's a process of 8 months. So you have to get your act together if you lose your job. And usually white people in South Africa cannot get new jobs in. And now the new trend in South Africa is if you are above 50 years old, you do not get re-employed to a new job because they want to get the new young candidates in because they are cheaper labor.
Yeah.
And so now white older people is not getting those jobs if they lose their jobs on whatever the reason may be. So now these type of people is getting poorer and poorer by the day. So they will lose their house, they will lose all their cars, they will lose all their possessions and land in a squatter camp that you live from people, so that you go and stand at street corners and beg for money then, and the beggars in South Africa, white beggars in South Africa, is getting more and more by the day. So, and each and every street corner in the Pretoria capital is a white beggar. So the problem is that these types of laws, like the broad-based black economic empowerment, is the meaning to our people, and then we are losing a lot of people, and we're getting more and more of these so-called poor people, and they're living in squatter camps. So the problem is one law made 1 million jobless in approximately 20 years.
And it's rising by the day, because I read an article the other day that the steel industry is talking of closing down certain factories and processing plants, which means the loss of 190,000 jobs. Now, in South Africa, each person with a job is supporting 4 to 8 other people. So you take that 190,000, let's call it 200,000, and just take the lower figure, take it 5, let's meet in the middle there, 5 people supported. That is already 1 million people dispossessed with no food, no home, no hope of a future. And that's black and white together. No matter what we say, Francois, the black people in South Africa, because they are the majority and because there are so many of them, are suffering as much.
Yeah, and precisely that. And because a communist style of party is running our country and is only looking after themselves and have a grudge towards the people, a certain group. Now they're affecting the whole base of the population, and this incompetency that also plays a role. And a lot of people in the sectors lose their jobs because of bad decisions that is made by government, because of the hate towards a certain group. So it is affecting a lot of people. Black and white is suffering because of if you can call the word, a stupid government. So the problem is that we are suffering from stupidity. That's the thing at the moment. And now on the case of people losing their jobs, now approximately of those 200,000 that are going to lose their jobs in the industry is white people, because we are the most skilled in the technical sector. So now we're going to get 500,000 approximately more white beggars at street corners if they do not get jobs in a short time frame in a year's time. So we will getting more and more of those people, and the white charities cannot supply to them all, because white charities cannot get the corporate funding that we want to, and overseas funding is not that big at the moment because of the world economic crisis that we are suffering at the last few months now.
Yes, but not just that, Francois. What another thing that is helping the whole situation to escalate, and it is, I have seen that the murder rates, the farm murders, the attacks, have escalated this year. They're higher than any other year. And what is helping that is the total media blackout worldwide on what is happening in South Africa.
Yes, even in our own country, the Afrikaans papers is not reporting on that, and they are our biggest enemy at the moment. My own people is my biggest enemy.
Yes.
That is writing these type of articles, and they don't want to write articles about the job losses towards a certain group, and if they write about white beggars, then it's the negative side of the white beggars, that the view that out there is demeaning the whole point of it, what is really causing it. And so our own media is against us, and now luckily these days some of the clever journalists around the world is reporting us what is really happening in South Africa, but then it's only one article, and then a few months goes on, and then whoever the country may be is forgetting what really happened. They have to be constant reporting, and even in South Africa it's not constant reporting. If there comes up an article, it is one article in 6 months, and then people forget. So, and luckily for us, National is getting constant reaction in the media, because we are putting the point out there, and the media have to report on that. And so, luckily enough, in the last year, the media is reporting towards certain cases of what is really happening in South Africa because of our direct approach that is not being used by other organizations or parties in the last 20 years. And hopefully we will get more and more coverage on that. That in radio shows like yours that we are on tonight is getting the message out there because people need to know what's really happening here. South Africa is the one place that do not get reporting much enough around the world because even our just on corruption, it is not getting out there on that point.
Yes, we were talking. Okay, I'm going backwards a little bit. We're not talking in a straight line here, but we were talking earlier about. Well, we need to go back to this because people don't know about this either. We were talking about unqualified people getting the jobs. Now, recently, there has been an absolute outcry in South Africa about false claims on people's, they call it here a resume. In South Africa, we call it a CV. But these people claim that they have got PhDs, that they've got engineering degrees, and all kinds of things. And then when something goes horrifically wrong and a scapegoat is needed, then suddenly the government discovers that this person does not have a degree after all. A case in point is the train disaster. If you could speak about that.
Yeah, our train company that is totally state-owned, Praza, is buying trains for our system here in South Africa. And the main engineer ordered trains from Spain that wasn't fitted enough on our railway lines here in South Africa, and now the problem is our lines have to be modified, and the engineers, he did all his process and what, and then they said, how is it possible that you did all those and still buy the wrong Then it was discovered that the main engineer said he was a civil engineer and all his qualifications, he was registered at certain bodies that proves his qualification, and then when they go and actually do research around it, he wasn't even near a university studying anything. He bought his degree from someone that he was a qualified engineer from a university in South Africa, and now he's been put on paid leave until the investigation was done. So and now he's actually been fired. But the problem is that the process towards that, South Africa is losing a lot of money and a lot of incompetencies is costing a lot of people many stuff because of this. And even a minister, actually about a year ago, said he was a doctor and everyone believed him. Yes, he's the most honest minister that we ever had. And then it came out that he wasn't even a PhD qualified, that he actually did have a university degree. So that's the type of people that we have in South Africa and our government and our top state-owned enterprises that and such incompetency is running around every day in our country.
Well, your president has no education whatsoever.
Luckily enough, he didn't lie about that.
No, he didn't. But the fact remains: how does a man who's never been to school, because as I understand it, he was taught by a school teacher, but he didn't go to school. So he possibly has a grade 3 or 4 reading and writing education and basic arithmetic. But he has no education. And he is fit to run an entire country. And does not all this come from the top? Everything comes from the top down. So if at the top you have a person with about a general 9-year-old education, to run the country, why then should somebody who is totally uneducated not run the railways and buy millions of rands? I think it was billions of rands worth of trains that he bought. And now there's been an accident. The first time that train ran, there was an accident in which 300 people were injured. Yes,
and that's the type of incidents that happen, and afterwards the investigations is taking place, and then it comes out, because every company in the world, even myself, when I interview people for a job, I go and check their degrees, and I want that physical degree to be checked. And I cannot understand that the state-owned sector is not doing. But the main problem is that we are giving out the jobs to the friend of friend, or family, and these type of people gets the jobs, and that isn't qualified. They said, just lie about it, and you will get a job. Just say you have some sort of a degree. And even on that note, that of this type of lies that goes around in the job market and in our government, and then corruption comes because of incompetency. They see the easy way to go. Oh, I can steal now, and I can take a lot of money, or I can give out tenders to my friends, and so on. And Jacob Zuma, our president, is one of the biggest corrupt people in the world, because just before he was elected in 2009 in his first term as president, he had a lot of cases pending against him for corruption.
700, yeah. As I understand it.
Yes, and there's actually now been a count that could have been about 1,200 if he wasn't being elected. So the thing is that we have the most corrupt president in the world, because he's part of corrupt schemes in his days when he was the deputy president of South Africa and the ANC back then. So he made deals with businessmen just to get money out of it. So we have such type of, and our government is the same type of style that we will have on that.
Absolutely, because so then we need to go and speak about Julius Malema of the Economic Freedom Party.
Ah, my friend.
Yes. Now, he failed woodwork at school. That is an almost impossible thing to do, but this brilliant young man failed woodwork, and yet he has a following of millions of young, angry, unemployed, unemployable, disaffected youth.
And he even himself is the most corrupt young person that we can have, because he has charges was dropped against him a month or two ago for corruption that taken place in the Limpopo province of South Africa, for tender corruption and so on. And see, that's the type of politicians that we have in South Africa. It seems to be, if you want to be a politician, you have to be corrupt. And then I'm a bad politician in South Africa, because I can't be corrupt, because it's against my religion to be corrupt. So, and that's the type of people that we have in South Africa. And he is swapping up a lot of youth in South Africa to be militant and to be just chaotic people in South Africa, and just because he's an idiot and can't pass woodwork even. So, and that's the type of leaders that we have in South Africa.
Yes, but the problem is that the same black youth that I was speaking about earlier, those people do not see him as a corrupt person. They see him as a symbol of what they can become if just given a little bit of space and opportunity to do what he has done. They don't see him as a corrupt person that they should not be following.
If I can just explain quickly something on corruption in the black culture. They believe corruption is a Western idea. So they believe that corruption is a practice that should be applied every day in the society. So they don't see corruption as a sin or a disloyalty to the law, or whatever you want to call it. They see it as a normal day practice, and they say that they want to change the law here in South Africa. One of these idiot politicians said they want to change the law, that corruption should be taken out of the law system, that you can't be charged for that. So because they see the corruption as an everyday practice. So that's the belief in the African culture that we have here in South Africa and around the African continent.
Yeah, I believe it was Jacob Zuma himself who said they cannot charge him with corruption because corruption is a Western paradigm and South Africa is not a Western country. So, and it worked because all those charges just disappeared.
Yes, and there's a lot of organizations that try to get those charges against them reapplied, but the thing is, you get immunity if you're the president, so they have to wait for him the day he steps down, and that probably day will never come, because there was a report now that he's seeking a third term, and South African constitution only make provision for 2 terms, so the constitution will probably change in the next year or two to make provision for him to stay longer in the presidency seat. So, and that's it. We are going towards now a dictator state now, or a more police state that South Africa will be going down the drain like Zimbabwe with Robert Mugabe that he's been there for about 30 years now. So that's the type of result that we will have now as a Zimbabwe now.
So, Francois, this is a question that I've been asking, and I've heard some reasonable answers, but I still don't understand why. Why did the world turn their back and just ignore South Africa after 1994?
We can ask the same question in the 1980 when Rhodesia, Zimbabwe. Why did it all turn back around them? And that's just the same question can be asked to South Africa, because the black people said they were oppressed and whatever the reason may be that they want to call it, and they wasn't oppressed. They were one of the most viable people in the world back then under the white governments that was ruling there. So the thing is that they made a claim like so that the world believed that they were oppressed, and they weren't actually oppressed. The black African that was living in South Africa was 3 times more wealthy than they are now, and that and the inflation rate back then was a lot lower. So even back then they were more richer than now. So the thing is, the world believed one story and didn't believe their own people, their own European people, that they, like our European countries, believed that we oppressed the black people and said that we didn't give them jobs, and which is the biggest lie in the world. And now they're more poorer under a black government than they were back then on a white government. So our own brothers betrayed us on that, for Zimbabwe and South Africa.
I absolutely agree with you, Francois, because and I've done a lot of research into the history recently, and seriously, yes, there were injustices in the apartheid regime, but if you look at it in the context of the history of that day and how things were done in the world in those days, all that the apartheid segregation people did was self-defense, because the Africans were flocking into South Africa from all over Africa because it was a rich, westernized, developed country, and they wanted their supposed part of that Western civilization. And even today, they don't want the colonials, but they want the results of colonialism. They want the money, the good houses, the good jobs, the clothes, the designer watches, etc. They want the BMW. They want all of that, but they don't want the white people who provide that.
Yes, and that's the whole thing. The concept do not get to them, and they believe if the white people goes away, those things will stay, and that's the problem. That things is coming with us because we are providing it to them, and they cannot see the reason in their beliefs at a moment. So they believe that the white people is the biggest criminal in the world, but they want our technology and our ideas that we created for them here. So now it's a conflict of interest on their stance on that. So the black African is probably the one that didn't think his thoughts so well over when he's talking. So that's the thing. If I talk, I think of the consequences. He do not think of the consequences, and that's the day-to-day practice here in South Africa. He do not think of the consequences of his speeches that he's made and the statements that he's made. What is going to be happening? Because the white people leave South Africa will fail.
Well, yes, because one has to go back in history one more time. And when the whites landed in South Africa, when Jan van Riebeeck landed there, and even the Portuguese before him, when they landed there were no blacks except the tiny tribe of Khoi that were there. There were no blacks in South Africa when the white man arrived. Now, when they met up with the blacks, who were what was to become the Zulu, but they were not the Zulu nation at that time. They were coming from the north and slaughtering all the nations in their path, taking the women and sometimes the children, taking the cattle and slaughtering the men. I mean, they slaughtered tens of thousands of black tribes on their way south. But they were not the Zulu nation until later on in the day. But when they met up with those people, they didn't ride horses. They hadn't invented the wheel. They had no written language. They did not build cities. They were nomads and warriors, slaughterers, really. I mean, it's very much like the hordes of the Mongols, the Genghis Khan invasion of Europe. It's kind of that sort of thing, but Genghis Khan had more civilized methods. I mean, they didn't even really wear clothes. They still wore skins when the whites met them. So the whites were to withdraw entirely from Africa, which is close, because South Africa has the biggest resident population of white people who actually belong there and were born there in the whole of Africa. So if they were wiped out, every white innovation would disappear. And that is what I would like to talk about, is the effects from 1994 to today, the downfall of South Africa, because there are no qualified blacks in charge, things like Eskom. I'd like you to talk about the collapse of the infrastructure and the parastatals in South Africa.
Yeah, electricity supplier in South Africa is Eskom, the state-owned enterprise that was established by Afrikaners in the 1940s when there was electricity problems back then. So they invented the corporation of Eskom. So now Eskom has been so degenerated in the last 20 years by the black people that now we have the term called load shedding. And if I can explain to the people what is load shedding, it's when Eskom is turning your power off in certain sections of the day, that certain areas powers will be going off for about 2 hours to 6 hours. So and then if they implement the load shedding schedule, then you can probably be without electricity for 2 to 6 hours on a daily basis. And that's the type of infrastructure collapse that isn't just on electricity, because there isn't been done maintenance and there haven't been supplied to demand, and new stations was built because the black people believed that the white man provided enough electricity for 300 years of living, so they believe they didn't need to buy they didn't need to build new power stations, because there was a report in 1997 that made out that South Africa needs to build more stations. Then Thabo Mbeki himself said, no, why do you need to build more stations? Because there's enough. But they didn't realize the problem of population growth in South Africa, and see, that's the type of incompetence that is affecting infrastructure in South Africa. And now there's a new thing that is going our way now on the water supply in South Africa. And around the world, water is scarce at the moment because of certain factors. And now even South Africa is an incompetency that we don't have water at the moment, is that they want to do water sharing, and that's on the same principle as load shedding on electricity, that water will be turned off for 2 to 3 hours just to get supplied to water to everyone in South Africa, just to get them clean water. And some of the municipalities in South Africa's water supply is so bad that the people can't even drink it. And the last time that there was drinkable water was 22 years ago, before the collapse of apartheid. So the problem is that just on the basic needs of electricity and water, the whole system has collapsed in South Africa, that municipalities cannot supply electricity to the people, or drinking water or running water to them. And now even our rail system is also in a dire strait at the moment, because if you can say, the crap cannot even flow out of our cities because it's just staying there at the moment.
Yes.
So the thing is that these types of basic needs infrastructure is collapsing more and more and more now, that we are at the point that we have now load shedding, that I explained the term, and now we are going to water shedding also now, probably in the near future. So the basic need infrastructure it have collapsed, and it cannot be. If you want to get it back to where it was, you have to start from scratch again, and that will take about 20 years to get it back to the standard that it was. So the problem is that South Africa will basically have a total infrastructure collapse just on the basic needs. And now we're looking at roads. The roads is the basic method of transportation around the world, and just certain parts of the towns that we have in South Africa, there is no drivable road even, because we have potholes. I don't know if the Americans know the term pothole, but it's when there is no maintenance done on a road, that then a big hole is coming up that is through water that isn't running away from the road. So a hole is being developed there. So we getting some of the roads, like an example in Kroonstad in Free State, is a town there. The potholes is as high as a 2-meter high man. So that's how deep the holes is there on their roads, and even such water is not drinkable anymore. So you will probably die from diarrhea if you drink that.
Yeah, absolutely. And now they're not even bothering with the sewage system. They're running it straight into the Vaal River and into the sea. They're not even going to sewage reconstitution plants where they get cleaned up. They're just running it straight into the rivers.
Yes, if it gets to the rivers, actually, because some of the systems is now being blocked, literally, that cannot be, because there's an oversupply of sewage that cannot get out of the cities, and the problem is that these types of lines is now blocked, and now it's a health issue then, and even I will now explain the health system, and that's a total different story on its own. But the basic needs, and like sewage, need to get out of the cities and towards a treatment plant. But now it even can't get to the treatment plant. And if it gets out of the city, it goes into our water resources systems, and that type of systems already not up to standard. And that's the main problem, because the basic needs for every South African, black and white and color, Indian, cannot be supplied to, and we will probably be in a problem that all of the people have to run out of South Africa to other places just to get basic needs, and that's our living human right, to have running water and electricity and a basic medical living standard that need to be supplied to. And if I can explain to the listeners about other infrastructure collapses like medical needs, like in the hospital systems, there is no such thing like that, because people, black and white, is dying every day in the state hospital for diseases that is very curable, like sinusitis and bronchitis and lung infection. That type of
basic thing that anyone can cure.
Can cure, and that cannot even be cured in our state hospitals these days, because there's not enough medicine that is can be supplied to the patients, and the doctors isn't even qualified enough to treat the people. And if we want to get doctors that need, and there's not enough doctors even in our state hospitals, so now we import doctors from Cuba, your lovely friends from Cuba, and then we get Cuban imports, and then they're not even up to standard, and that's the type of people that we have in our hospital system because of bad management and bad skills. And so now if I go to a state hospital, I will probably live longer than just to stay at home and try to cure myself with basic methods than to go to a state hospital, because state hospitals sanitation and all the other needs that need to be in place cannot be supplied for. Now the standards of the hospitals can't be supplied, and you will probably die of something else that you came into the hospital because of the bad situation that is there, because some of the hospitals is not even clean. They use from the certain medical equipment over and over at the same time, because like needle need to have to be thrown away after you use it, and they sometimes they use it over and over again. So see, that's the type of stupidity that we have in our state hospital sector, and a lot of people is dying in our state hospitals because of substandard hospitalized system in South Africa.
Well, they don't have beds. You have to bring your own mattress sometimes. They don't have sheets and blankets. They don't have food. They don't have basic medication. The toilets are well, it's not even worth talking about. So for myself, I would not go to a state hospital in South Africa. But if you think about the poor people in South Africa, and now the unemployment rate is realistically about 50% amongst blacks as well as whites. So if you look at that, the black youth unemployment I saw the other day was at around 54%. If you look at that, those people have to go to a state hospital because they certainly cannot afford a private one. Now, I would never go there because I'm guaranteed I'm going to die. But I would also like you to please speak about the way that they treat white people at the state hospitals?
Yes, and usually if you've been treated by medical personnel, your nurses is black and your doctors is black. So they go in with the attitude you are a slave to them. So he will treat you as a slave, and he will probably do not treat you at all, because certain times you get into the reception area, it takes about 4 hours just to open and file for you to get treated, and then you wait another 4 hours just to get treated again. So you probably will be there the whole day, and not a single thing has been done to these people, and the white people is suffering about it because they treat us when we get to the state hospitals as slaves. That's the basic term that I can use for it. There is no other term that I can use, and you will be treated as a slave, and they see I'm the big one in charge now, and I will do just whatever I like to be, and that's the thing. And white, an older section of our population in the white section didn't apply for private medical care, so I need to go to the state hospitals, and I treat these old people of ours like so bad that you can't even explain it. And there's other words for that, but then I will probably be cut off by you.
But Francois, I've seen this in the last month. I've seen this. A white woman was refused by the security guard, refused access to the hospital. You cannot come in here. A person needed a blood transfusion, but there was no blood available. That was late at night. They brought an accident victim, white, into the hospital. The nurses were on a tea break in the emergency room and just continued chatting and having their tea while this person bled to death. So these are things that white people have to deal with in South Africa today.
Yes, and that's the attitude from them towards us. The whole problem is not the treatment also. It's the attitude problem towards us. A bit of treatment that they can give us, they don't want to give us because of the attitude problem towards us, because of a hate that they have for our people. And that's the thing that is happening in our hospitals. Our medical needs cannot be supplied because of a attitude and a hate problem towards us. And so now our people are suffering about that. So that's the whole problem. It's an hate and an attitude problem towards us that is happening in our state hospital sector towards the white people.
We're going to take a small break now. I'm going to play a song by Tattoo Billy called Children of Ham. He is an American singer who wrote the song for South Africa. He's a great, great man who has the problems of the whites in South Africa on his heart. He's a boxer. He used to be called the White Tiger, who fought his last match to raise funds for the white people of South Africa. We will be back with you in approximately 4 minutes.
Trying to raise something to eat. Women and children being abused. The ANC now ain't they cool? Children have. You got blood on your hands, sinking in quicksand. You never make it to the promised land. You wild child. Wild child. Come undone. Wild child. Oh, you never learn. Wild child. You got blood on your hands. Wild child. Wild child. All you Africans in the house, throw your hands up and make a fist. We about to resist. All you Africans in the house, throw your hands up and shout it out to France, the rich. Wild child, come on, wild child, you never learn. Wild child, you got blood on your hands. Wild child.
And we're back. You're listening to Radio Free South Africa, brought to you by Rage Against the Regime podcast. This is your host, Karen Smith, and our guest today is Francois Cloete from Front National, coming to you directly from South Africa. And we're back, Francois. So we were talking about the collapse. We were talking about the collapse of the infrastructure in South Africa.
Yes, and all the basic infrastructure needs of South Africa is collapsing because of incompetency, and the basic is that the skilled people was left out of the workplace. That was mostly white. That was excluded because of black economic empowerment. So we lost a lot of skilled people in those infrastructure sections. And that's why it's a big collapse. And white people did supply the most skilled work in the world, and that's the thing that we told earlier, that broad-based black economic empowerment was the result of that. The one law that it can have such rippling effect across the broad of what is happening here in South Africa, and that's the consequence of the decision back then.
Absolutely, and yes, when it started out as affirmative action, one could almost agree with it. The previously disadvantaged, etc., need to be brought up to a better standard of living. But the actual result of that is everybody has been brought down to the lowest possible standard.
Yeah, and our employment rate is just as big, so we can't get those jobs back even. Because there isn't enough money to supply these jobs for the people. Our treasury at the moment do not probably have enough money to see them through the next 10 years. So that's the other problem that we have. So there can't be infrastructure development so that we can provide jobs for people. But now if there can be supply jobs, then it will probably not go to the white people because of a law that I told over and over again that will probably will not give them those type of jobs. So, and now, you see, that's the main problem, that one law is basically degrading us totally to a standard that we are basically not human anymore.
Yes. And that is another thing I would like to speak to, because we were saying that there is corruption, there is total destruction of South Africa. Now, what I would like to speak about is, because of this lowest common denominator thing, the education system is hopeless. The post office is beyond hopeless. The South African Airways is finished. I mean, just about everything that made that country into a first world country is now destroyed, because it took a little while of non-maintenance and non-care for this to happen, but eventually things will crumble to dust because they need maintenance, and it's not been happening. So for the first while, the country was more or less able to maintain itself, but everything is now falling to pieces. And
yeah, precisely.
Yes, and it's just going to get worse. Now, the tax base in South Africa is very small, is it not?
Yes. Only there's a number that every year goes around from the South African Revenue Services. That's our tax body that we have in South Africa. The approximate number is that 5 million people is contributing tax toward the treasury in South Africa. So, and of those 5 million, 2 million of them is white. So 40% of the people that's contributing to the treasury is white people. So and of those 2 million, they are providing about 70% of those tax. So we are providing the most tax towards the treasury of South Africa, and they are treating us most baddest ways possible. So we are just a nice scapegoat because say pay the tax, but we will treat you like dirt. So that's the thing that we have. That 5 million people have to uplift a country of 70 million people. So that's the scenario that we have in South Africa. And 2 million of the taxpayers is white, and they contribute 70% of the money towards South Africa.
So 70% of the state income comes from people who didn't vote for that government.
Precisely, and there were organization and myself believe that the franchise vote have to be proposed in South Africa, that if you physically pay tax, you can vote for your president and your government. But that the likelihood of that ever happening is none, because then probably Front National will govern South Africa.
Yeah, absolutely. So, right, let us now get to self-determination, because since 1652, when the first Dutch people came to South Africa, closely followed by the French Huguenots and the Great Trek and everything, all those Afrikaner people have ever wanted is to rule themselves according to their Calvinistic religious beliefs and their own moral standards. That is all they have ever wanted. They never wanted to rule over these blacks. They never wanted to force anybody else to follow their way of life. And to this day, that is still what they are striving for.
Yes, we lost our freedom 3 times. So hopefully the 4th time will be permanent then. And that's the thing that the people left the Cape to get new pastures, and then they lost their freedom, and then they regained them again, and now we lost it. We have lost our freedom in our short time of history in Africa 3 times. So that's the thing. We came to the Cape as a passage route to supply foods to passing boats. And then we became a ethnic group that is different from Europe because of our African roots that we have here now. And then the British came and colonized us again. So then the poor people, that's why the Great Trek was started, and then we gained our freedom again, and then we lost it again towards to the British, and then we gained our freedom again back in 1948. Then we lost it to the ANC government, and that probably the last one is mostly the most hurtful one, because it's a group that didn't even borrowed us for so long since our arrival here. And that's the main problem that we have, and hopefully the 4th time will be a more permanent time.
Now, Francois, since we last spoke on another program, I've been really thinking about this. And what you've just said about 2 million of the 5 million taxpayers being the white people who pay 70% of the taxes. Why then would the ANC government allow that 70% of their revenue to go away and have their own place where they pay taxes to their own government? They wouldn't allow it, would they? I mean, it doesn't make sense to allow it.
Yeah, if I were Jacob Zuma and his cronies, then I will probably do not allow it myself. So, but the thing is, if we do not get out of the system, we will never survive. And the nice thing of the international laws, this is not the ANC's decision or the South African government for them if we want self-determination. And luckily enough, for now, there is international laws that cover us in that section, and we just needed our big enough band-aid to follow that process, and we're starting that process every day so that we can get self-determination in South Africa. So, and on that point, now the ANC is getting advice from smart people that they have to go away from those international resolutions and so on, that they cannot supply to us self-determination and all those nice things that we want now. So, and even they didn't oblige to international resolution when Omar al-Bashir was in South Africa and he didn't arrest him for crimes against humanity. So that's the feeling from them towards those international resolutions that saved them back then. Now they didn't want to oblige to that.
Well, you see, this is the worry that I have, is that
Yes.
right? Zuma sings, "Bring me my machine gun, we're going to kill the Boer." Malema sings, "Kill the Boer." The other party says, "One settler, one bullet." So they do not want you. They tell you, go back to Europe where you came from. They tell you, if you do not like the crime, then leave. They tell you that Jan van Riebeck was the start of the problems in Africa. They turn everything around and make it the fault of apartheid. But they almost make it impossible for you to leave because they need you. And at the same time, they are definitely, and I mean there is no doubt about it, even Dr. Gregory Stanton from Genocide Watch said that it is coming from the top, that they are inciting the black people to kill the Boer and use one settler, one bullet, except if it was that kind, it wouldn't be half as bad, but they use pangas and irons and broken bottles and torture to kill you. I'm not saying that a death by bullet is a good thing, but wow, it would be even kinder than what they're actually doing to you. So,
yes,
you know, if it's coming from the top, that you must kill these people, but we need you. And we're going to make it impossible for you to leave, because if you apply for asylum somewhere else, we will send our top lawyers to fight it, as they did to that guy in Canada. They do not, I mean, it can take you 2 years to get a police clearance in South Africa to leave the country, and you can't immigrate anywhere without it. They're making it impossible for you to leave, but at the same time, making it impossible for you to live there. So what is the solution for the whites in South Africa?
And the solution is self-determination, because if you have money, you can leave South Africa more quickly. But like myself, do not have the millions of rands to leave South Africa, so I have to follow that lengthy process, and that will not happen very quickly. So the thing is, and now the only thing that we can hope for is that we can get self-determination, or perhaps colonize Namibia again. So then we have the majority there. But I don't think that's a solution. But the thing is, the only thing that we still have is that the UN resolutions, and if South Africa do not apply again to those resolutions, there can probably be military action towards South Africa. That was a rumor that was going around in the sectors of South Africa, that probably there's some of the small people here that said it probably can happen, that the UN forces can come and militarize South Africa just because of that, if it is going to happen more and more now. But I think South Africa forgot about the international resolutions for now, so they didn't want to cancel that. So it's probably still in our favor. So the thing is, resolutions or not, the world will probably see that South Africa is going down as a whole. So they have to come and take action here, because South Africa cannot survive on the current trend at the moment. So the world will probably see as South Africa as a whole, not the problem towards only white people.
Yes.
As a whole,
yes.
that they will have to come and take action against South Africa, because even human rights violations is not, and I speak now, I'm not speaking in a liberal way now, but that human rights violations is towards every single person in South Africa, and then in the world they have to start looking at that. And that's the thing that we are hoping for, that the world will probably look on that side of the spectrum that can help, can come in, and so that the South Africa can be broken up into pieces, that South Africa as a whole is destroyed and then broken up in pieces, that ethnic groups can rule over themselves, and that will be the best solution that there is, because the Kara people is also suffering, and the Indian South Africans is also suffering. So as a whole, we all of these groups need to get self-determination as a whole, and that's the basis that the world have to look at it, and that white people will benefit from such stance, and that's my own personal view, not my party's view.
Yes,
and then white people need get self-determination. So does the other minorities in South Africa.
But that's exactly what they had, Francois.
Yes.
They had that, and they didn't want it.
Yes, and I think they are now the other minorities is thinking now they had that, and now and actually now the colored people, there's a movement in the Cape that now wants their self-determination back. So I think that they saw the consequences of this so-called non-racial society. No society in the world have ever proven that a non-racial society works. Not even in the United States, not even in Europe, not even in Australia, and it will never work in South Africa because we every day have a racial issue somewhere. If it's in the workplace, if it's just around at the shop, see that the problem is a multicultural country cannot work forever. So, from day one, it didn't work in South Africa.
No, because in South Africa, you have got a unique circumstance. You have 11 and probably more tribes, designated tribes, and under those are all the subgroups of those tribes, ruled by a king or a chieftain, and each subgroup has got their own chieftain and their own ways, and those groups of Africans were slaughtering each other wholesale before the whites arrived. And my opinion on this is, if they were not united in their hatred for the white group of people, they would then go back to their normal tribal ways of fighting each other, because the xenophobic attacks show you that.
Precisely, and luckily for us, there's a certain section of the black population that's starting to see the light, like the Venda people. They also registered at the United Nations, the Unrepresented Nations and People Organization, UNPO for short, as a group that wants themselves ruled, and that's a northern tribe in South Africa that's living in the Limpopo province, and they also seeking that now. And I see some of the smaller tribes is also speaking out, the black tribes now, that's the only solution, because they see African, the broad idea of South Africa is not working because of racial divisions and ethnic divisions in South Africa. That's causing the main problems towards the whole of South Africa that we have now because of infrastructure collapses and all, etc., etc. And heritage sites being destroyed just because I'm different. I will now explain that situation now, and that. And they said that we have to be divided again. So that the thing is, the small groups in the black populations is starting to see the light on that, and that's helping our own case at the moment. If other organizations that's fighting for those type of groups is standing up and said no, it's not correct, then we have to start looking after our own affairs.
Yes, I agree with you. And it's an impossible dream, but if enough of them went to the same places like UNPO and like the United Nations, as Front National has done, if enough of them did that, people would have to turn their attention to South Africa, because we talk about BRICS again, but South Africa is of immense strategic importance to the world, because every oil-carrying ship, every ship has to go around the Horn of Africa. And if Africa were not friendly towards those nations whose ships have to go that way, well, it would be a very tragic... I mean, imagine if South Africa had their pirates going out, as they do further up in Africa. They have those pirates going out and boarding ships and destroying ships, etc. Imagine if that were happening in South Africa, where these ships have to go past. I mean, and also the fact that South Africa has just about every mineral known to mankind except for oil. We have everything in South Africa. So our strategic importance to the Western world is enormous, and they cannot afford to let South Africa fail.
No, that's precisely the point. And my solution, and I think it's probably some people that, even if they don't agree at the current moment, they will probably in the near future, is that South Africa have to be divided up into sections, that these types of minerals can be supplied to the world that is in dire need of certain of these, like platinum, for example.
Yes.
Because platinum is used in the cars, in some of the systems of a car. So that's because the platinum is a much needed element. So and that's why I think in some of these groups is realizing that for the supply, will it probably benefit? And I think the world will probably eventually see it if they can see the win-win situation of it, because the world is not seeking human rights; they're seeking money. If they can get the most money out of a certain group, they will do it. And if a white African state is that, then they will probably try do and support it. And that's on that. Even on that basis, we have to try and convince them that this is a probable solution for them.
Yes, because it is not about human rights. It is about follow the money. I mean, that is how the world runs. It doesn't matter how airy-fairy liberal you are, the fact remains the world runs on finance. And in anything that goes wrong or goes right, follow the money. Now, the money is beginning to dry up in South Africa because of all these communist rules and BBE and the absolute tyranny of the government there. And so the world is going to have to eventually look at South Africa. My only hope is that it's in time for the white people there, because there are so few. You could be eliminated in a very short space of time if there were concerted effort to do that. So my hope is that we wake the world up and make them look in your direction before that happens.
Yes, and probably the only solution is look at the financial aspect of it, because the world needs to be convinced that the financial solution for them is a what a self-determination state, and that's also a way that we talking to these types of people overseas, that we can be a sustainable factor economically for a whole southern African development bloc, so that we can actually supply them with the rest of the Southern Africa development bloc enough resources and enough skills and everything that is needed to be sustainable factor and for the world. So we're also using that way of talking to people overseas that this probably is a solution that we need to be to have our own state that rule ourselves, that we can be a sustainable factor for the southern part of Africa.
Because if you look look back historically, that's what South Africa always was. We aided Zimbabwe, we aided Lorenzo Marx, we aided Mozambique, we aided these countries in their time of need, in their time of civil war, in their time of sanctions against them. And we only collapsed because we were sold out. There's no question about that either. We were sold out, and so South Africa has gone downhill since then and is unable to help itself, much less anybody else. But prior to 1994, we were the powerhouse of Africa, and we could be that again, because the white South Africans would build that country up to where it was, if left to do it.
Yes, and that's precisely our presentation that we'll give to the world. Human rights violations is one, but to be a sustainable factor that people can benefit from as a region bloc, we can supply that, because we can supply resources and skills and everything that's needed for the southern bloc of Africa and for all of Africa and even the southern hemisphere for that matter, that we can be a sustainable factor, that we can provide, because we've proven that through history, and we can prove it again to the world, and that's the main thing, and that because financially everyone will benefit from that.
My worry about that, Francois, and I'm throwing very strange questions at you today. No, but you have to look at the world as a whole today.
Yes.
Those self-same Africans, they didn't want colonists in their country. They threw out the colonials. And they created havoc and devastation in their own countries. And now they are fleeing by their hundreds of thousands to white countries. Those same people that they didn't want in their country because they wanted to rule themselves. They were being oppressed by these white people. Look at Europe this week with African so-called refugees. Now, my thing is this. Throughout the history of white South Africa, the blacks have poured in from all, and still are to this day, even though South Africa is in such a bad way. They have poured into the white areas because they had advancements and they were financially viable. So if we were, okay, I'm president of the world, and I'm now going to give you white South Africans your own self-determination, would that not be the immediate result of it, that these blacks would start pouring in again?
See, and that's the thing. We have to get a strict immigration stance on that you have to supply for yourself. We are now an independent country now. Immigration stance have to be very strict. And at the moment, Europe's immigration stance is so loose that depending on what the situation is, how they're getting into that country, it's very easy for them just to pass the police or the border patrol now, that they are fleeing by the hundreds and thousands of them by the country. But there's a possible solution. Those people, Africans and Syrians and all the Arab countries is now running to Europe. Those white people can run to South Africa, that we can become a majority again here in the southern point of Africa.
I love that. I love that idea. I really do love that idea. Because for me, Francois, yes, I left. But I didn't leave because I was fleeing the country. I left for different reasons. I married an American. He couldn't get a job in South Africa, and he said that a man supports his wife. A wife does not support her husband, and we are going back to my homeland where I can support you. So I left, but I didn't flee from the problems there. And for me, yes, why should you leave? Why should you? Many people have family roots going back 400 years. You are South African, and it's your country. And if you all leave, there will be no Afrikaner left, because you will have to assimilate into the countries that you go to, and you will not speak your language because people don't understand it and don't speak it there. And you will lose an entire race of people's identity, and they will disappear.
We will become a lost nation group. That is that will to be told in history that type of nation did exist at some time. So that's probably the route that will hopefully not become true, but at the current moment, because of people leaving South Africa, that type of story will probably happen. But if it can happen soon enough that you can self-determination, the Afrikaner tribe or a Boer tribe or a white African will forever live along again. So, and if I could just control the people there on heritage is to us, it's the most important thing that we still have left. And our language was invented in Africa of European roots, but with other cultures that assimilated, it formed a new African type of language that was developed here, and that's Afrikaans. And because the main roots is of Dutch, but we have some Malayan words and some other languages within it. And so it's a unique language that started here in Africa and will probably die here in Africa if it ever dies. So our language is the one thing that we still have left of our heritage, and then our heritage sites around South Africa, like monuments and statues and so on. And actually now even that is being attacked on now by our friends of the economic freedom fighters like Julius Malema and the ANC youth leader that stood up out of his misery now the last few weeks. So now he's now a big role player again. So about destroying our heritage, the one thing that we still have left. And I told a lot of reporters overseas about the defacing of monuments in South Africa, because they vandalize our monuments just because of its so-called colonized history. So now these types of organizations is destroying our monuments, defacing it totally, and now they want to remove these statues from their places and lock them away in storage places or probably destroy them completely. And now the call is that the Paul Kruger statue in Pretoria at Church Square needs to be removed because it's a colonized symbol. And Paul Kruger was the president of the Suid-Afrikaanse Republic, or so-called Transvaal Republic. He was the president of the Transvaal Republic, and back then only in the Transvaal Republic only 2,000 black people lived in it, so he didn't colonize at all that country at all. So it was that the Boers went up north after the Great Trek and established a country where no black African tribe ever lived. So they established a country and made borders and developed the country. So there's no colonization in that fort, and now they're destroying about our heritage sites like Mr. Paul Kruger statue just because of a stupidity education that they got from their leaders. Now they want to destroy our heritage. Now, the Front National is holding an appreciation day for Paul Kruger statue on the 10th of October. And now there's rumors that the EFF and the ANC Youth League wants to greet us with conflict that day. So, see that we can't even do our thing in peace and that without being attacked.
Yes, I'd like you to speak about that. How it started at Rhodes with the Rhodes statue and how it's just grown crazily from there, and also the anti-Afrikaner sentiment at these universities.
Yes, it started earlier in this year at the University of Cape Town, where the Rhodes monument was standing. Cecil John Rhodes was the CEO of the South African corporation that handled the affairs of the British colonies here in the southern point of Africa. His statue was there was a movement at the University of Cape Town that this statue need to be removed because this is a oppressing statue, and that's the main problem why the University of Cape Town is so racist and etc. etc. And now, after that removal, the other organizations like the EFF and the ANC Youth League came along and said that all statues in South Africa need to be removed because of its oppressing idea that they have towards it. So, and it's a type of symbol for them that is still oppressing them for their lack of incompetencies, actually. But they are blaming the statues now for a problem. So it started out of the whole country now that our monuments was being defaced, destroyed, or physically harmed. I don't know how they even describe it. In one paper, it said it was physically harmed. Even the statue is now a living human being.
But I mean, they literally threw human poo at that statue.
Yes, and some of the smaller towns' statues was certain things was drawn in it that is totally not talkable on the radio. So, so that's the type of thing that escalated from one movement at the university towards the Rhodes statue that completely escalated towards the whole country, that all of the Afrikaner or European monuments and statues were defaced or destroyed or just vandalized totally. So, and now the call is that these statues need to be removed, and the biggest one of them that I need to remove now is the Paul Kruger statue in Pretoria that I explained earlier, that they need to be removed. And then I think they have won the fight, and that probably there will be the solution to all the problems in South Africa. But unlucky for them, the problem will not go away, whatever the problems they are seeking to be solved in that sector. And that's why Front National is taking a stance against these people and said that the statues will not be removed because our heritage is part of Africa and part of South Africa, and it will never be removed from this. And we said we're taking the fight to the ANC Youth League and said the statue will stay, and we do it in a peaceful manner to protect our statues. And now they come with a conflict attacks that they want to probably harm us when we want to have a celebration about our heritage at one of our statues to come and physically harm us.
Now, what we also need to explain is that that university was funded by, given the land for, and still today, Cecil John Rhodes gave the money for that university. He gave the land, and in perpetuity, he's given scholarships to needy students. Now, the Rhodes Scholarship is famous throughout the world. Now, these people want to remove his statue, but they want to benefit from the university which he funded, from the ground that he put it on, and from the bursary that his estate has funded in perpetuity. They still want those benefits, but the statue must go.
Yes, and I've myself called on Twitter that the Rhodes bursary need to be taken away because the Rhodes statue was taken away, and then there was an outcry. And that's not the reason why we do it. And then the idiotic comments came along, and they don't see the broader picture of what they are really doing. If the Rhodes Scholarship Board is getting out of this country, a lot of needy students will not come and study, and there's already not enough skilled workers in South Africa. So the actions will have dire consequences, and even on at university level, they don't think about the consequences of their actions, because on the university at 1994 with the of discussions towards a new democracy in South Africa, the Afrikaner people was promised 2 Afrikaans universities will stay in South Africa, but now Afrikaans institutions is attacked just for being Afrikaans because it's racist and excludes people just because of language. Now that promise is not kept, so now there's a lot of conflict situations that's happening at the universities and at colleges now in South Africa. That, for example, in Stellenbosch, there's a movement now that calls for that Afrikaans should be taken away or marginalized totally. That other languages should be that English should be brought in to as an education medium, so that Afrikaans will totally disappear. And at Elsenburg College, there was not peaceful process, but
that's an agricultural college, is it not? That produces farmers.
Yes, Elsenburg is an agricultural college in the Western Cape, and they produce our farmers and our foremen that work on these farms. So, and that's an institution that is very important to the agriculture sector in South Africa. So now the students came there and make a physical conflict towards these Afrikaans students just because they are Afrikaans now, and that the language policy there is because it's an Afrikaans college, and the only if you want to go and study there, you know that you will probably you need to be taught in Afrikaans, and now concessions is made just to get these problems away, that the 50-50 base language policy should be implemented. And probably, in my view, in the next 2 years, we will probably have that Elsenburg College and the University of Stellenbosch will be totally 100% English universities after these concessions was made, because the Afrikaans universities is not standing up against these protesters and the education criminals, if I can state it like that, for not standing up against them on a language, for our language, because now they make concessions, and concessions have dire consequences. Then we will probably see that those 2 institutions will become 100% English universities or colleges. And even the University of Pretoria is now at such a place of those concessions that once when I was studied there, it was 50-50. It's now at the 70-30 ratio now, and probably in the next 5 years, some of the smart people say that will be a total English university.
Now, for me, Francois, you know that particular institution teaches in Afrikaans. You know that before you register there.
Yes.
So you choose to go to an Afrikaans institution that you will be educated in Afrikaans, and you pay for that, and then you create riots and beat up the students and burn down the university and deface statues and generally do not study. because you chose to go to an Afrikaans institution, and now, oh my Lord, they're teaching us in Afrikaans. Where is the logic?
Yeah, and see, you sign, if you go to university or any college, you sign a contract that you oblige to the rules and policies of the university or a college, and one of those rules is that you will be taught in Afrikaans. And now they are not obliged to the contract that they signed, so actually they are not law-abiding citizens now at all, and now the university is making concessions to an education criminal now, and actually the university have the rights that they can exclude these students now because they don't oblige to the rules and policies of the university or a college now. So these education criminals is getting their way more and more in our institutions. And actually, Stellenbosch was one of the main Afrikaans universities in Africa, and we will probably lose him as well. And the one that is also on the radar for a long time now is the Old Potchefstroom University that was incorporated into the broader Northwest University, but the Potchefstroom campus was still an Afrikaans campus, but we will probably lose him as well because the chancellor there wants to change the Potchefstroom campus also to an English campus now, like his other campuses in the university structure. So we probably finally lose our two Afrikaans universities that we had still left, and we only will have in South Africa 100% English universities. So the promise that was made to the Afrikaner in the CODESA discussions and negotiations will not be kept. And if your university's management do not take the stance and say, you made the promise, we will stay there, then the thing will never be clear, will not be resolved. So the problem is that our people at the moment make too much concession, just let the problem go away temporarily, than treating the problem really at the moment, because the rules do still apply, and these uproarious students should be just taken away and been cancelled their studentship at the colleges.
They should be, but they're not. And so what amazed me was that the whole road statue thing happened in South Africa, and within weeks of that happening, it started here in the USA.
Yeah, because many of your the Confederate veterans statues was defaced. So, and actually now there's been a call after the massacre of that crazy person in the church, killing the what is his name now? I can't remember. Yes, him. Yes. After that, the whole Confederation history, they wanted to be destroyed just because of one action, and now that's the same. One action leads to a lot of other things now. Now the Confederation flag is also in the process to be taken away from a lot of places in the United States, in the southern part. So the thing is that the same pattern is following in the United States as that is following in here in South Africa. And South Africa, it seems that it's been tested here, and then the black African Americans see now, okay, it worked there, it will most likely work in the United States as well.
Yes. Now, I've been saying for years, Francois, that in my opinion, South Africa is a test case for the rest of the world to see whether they can destroy the whites without an uproar from the rest of the world. And if it works there, then it will work everywhere. Now, 21 years later, the world has not taken notice of what is happening in South Africa, and now it is spreading throughout the white nations of the world. So my theory that South Africa is an experiment seems to be real, because they have seen that the world will leave white South Africans to their fate and not take any notice, and now they can do it everywhere. But what they didn't factor in was the internet and alternative media such as this show. They didn't know that that could possibly happen, because 21 years ago it did not exist. Now you can look up these things on the internet And therefore, South Africa has just made this internet censorship law.
Yes, and that's the problem that we are facing now, that information will be taken away from us at the moment, that we cannot read up on anything that it needs to be read on, and even our own blogs will be probably taken down just because of those laws, because we are telling the truth.
Yes. So you had a small window of opportunity there to have your story open for the rest of the world to see, and they are closing that window on you rapidly. So even that, the small voice you had to the outside world, your government is taking away from you.
Because we are a problem to them and will always be a problem to them as long as we are still here in South Africa. And they will do everything in their power to keep their mouth shut. And Front National is a thorn in their side at the moment because they have their ways of trying to stop us, but we always come out on top at the moment.
Now, I would really like to say that Front National went and got authorization to be the voice of white South Africans at the United Nations. And when they went and asked the United Nations to please look into the problems in South Africa, they found that despite all these other political parties' protests that the world is not looking, the world is not paying attention, they found that nobody had asked the United Nations to look into it. Am I correct, Francois, in that?
Yes, there have been a lot of reports taken to the United Nations, so-called, and then if you ask the officials then to look on their database, it's never been submitted at all. It's just a publicity stunt to make money out of our situation, and our situation is so dire that you can't make money out of it because it's not a money-making scheme. So, and me myself is not getting 1 cent for my actions that I'm doing here in South Africa, and I will probably never take 1 cent from it. So, and my action is just to save my people, not make money out of it. And there's a lot of this so-called Afrikaans or Afrikaner organizations that just making money out of our situation at the moment. So the problem is that money-making schemes is also in our society of the Afrikaner or the white people. So and Front National is one of those. We are not, even our membership, we're not asking money. So if you want to become a member, it's for free. And other organizations, the thing is, you want to become a member, you have to be a paying member. It's not a free membership.
Yes.
And that's the difference between us and other organizations. We do not ask membership fees because we are believing in our plight for self-determination and for our people.
And I can guarantee that because I became a member of Front National, even though I don't live in the country, and I have not been asked for 1 cent ever.
And we are totally public funded. If you want to make willingly a donation, we will accept it. But we make our rounds with our own money and out of our own pockets, and we do ask donors for money, but it's not a must. But if you want to donate, you donate. And
well, tell where they can go to donate, because you people really need money in order to get your members to these meetings of the United Nations and other organizations where you can speak up for the white South Africans. So you really do need money.
Yes, we do need money now, and the listeners out there can go to our Facebook page as Front National SA. Then I will find a Facebook page there, and all our bank details is on there that you can donate money to us, and even to go to our website to get more information on how to fund our plea out there is at www.frontnational.co.za. It's the Afrikaans spelling. It's FRONTNASIONAAL.co.za. So it's frontnational.co.za, and the people can go and ask our General Secretary there that on how they can donate money to us there.
Because this is very, very important for the white South Africans. Yes, I do have other political parties on the show, because I firmly believe that every side of the South African story needs to be told to the world, but I can tell you that Front National are in dire need of funds for their members to be able to travel out of the country and go to the meetings of the United Nations and other organizations where they can make the case for white South Africans. And at the same time that you are saying people are making money off of the misery of white South Africa, I know this for a fact because there are many charities out there holding out a hat and making promises that they are helping the white people, and they are not. So be very, very careful where you donate, because your money often goes into someone's back pocket and not where it is supposed to go. You can always contact me at Radio Free South Africa on Facebook. We are putting up a Facebook web page, which in the moment is under construction, but you can contact me and I will tell you which are good and which are not good, because I have done my research. Because the real charities and the real political parties that are actually helping are the people who are suffering from the scamming that is going on. Because once you have given to an organization that you find out is not above board, you do not want to give again, because you are scared that your money is not going where it's supposed to. So Francois is also available on Facebook, and he's easier to find than me because there aren't that many of him, but Karen Smiths are about 3,000 of us. So I'm very difficult to find on Facebook. But Radio Free South Africa is not difficult to find. You can always leave me a message on that page. But you need to be sure that your money is going where you intend it to go, because there are far too many people trying to make money off of the backs of the suffering whites in South Africa. Francois, we only have a few minutes left, so if you could just give some closing thoughts.
The thing is that the listeners are there. They should follow our Facebook page, because we are bringing the exact news of our situation every day on our Facebook page, and we upload it and then on the website. So they can everything that is need to be know of what really happening here in South Africa towards our people is every day. This post every day on our Facebook page regarding that, so they can read up precisely what is happening, because our information department is giving up-to-date info to the world out there.
Yes, your information officer, Daniel Lotter, is the most incredible writer. You will find him to be factual, truthful, and sometimes very, very funny. He is the most amazing writer. And yes, he does try very hard to put it in English. A lot of their posts are in Afrikaans, but Daniel makes an effort to ensure that a translation is available so that the English-speaking people can understand it, because how do you speak to the rest of the world in Afrikaans? They don't understand it.
Yes.
I have great admiration for Daniel because, as I say, he is a fabulous writer, and man, he makes me laugh. I don't know where you find laughter. Bad situation there, but he makes it possible. So we are coming to the end of our show. Thank you very, very much, Francois, for being my guest today.
No, my pleasure.
God bless South Africa. God bless America. And God help the world that we live in today. And as always, I'm playing out with my personal act of defiance to the South African government, the real song of South Africa, Die Stem.